Ave Legion and welcome to my channel. My name is Ludi and today we'll be doing our top 10 One Province Nations in 1.30. In judging the nations, I am going to take into consideration the missions, ideas, location, expansion opportunities and paths, as well as the formable nations that it can form. If we get this video to 1,000 likes, I'm also going to do a top 10 best religions in EU4 1.30, so don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Starting up on number 10 is the least inbred of all Austrian nations, namely Bregenz. Bregenz has an insanely great idea set, starting off with idea cost minus 10 from the very beginning. That means that all of your ideas with the first one are actually going to be discounted, and you also get land fire damage after you fill up everything, as well as national manpower plus 20%. As your first unlockable, you're going to get the ability to recruit female generals, as well as 5% discipline. You get female advisor chance plus 50% as well, and national tax plus 10%, as well as production efficiency. After you get the gold mine in Intal right next to you, you're going to take advantage of the next idea, which is yearly inflation reduction. Bregenz also has fort defense and morale of navies for some reason, because you are next to the biggest lake around, I guess. After the last of the Austrian dynasty is going to die because of genetical malfunctions, you're also going to be able to reclaim the Archduchy of Austria and become the inbred master yourself. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just form the German nation. Up to you. Aside from the gold mine next to you, Bregenz can also expand into the 3 leagues, Switzerland, as well as Augsburg. Its expansion into Memmingen and Konstanz is going to be slightly more difficult because they are both free cities and will be protected by the emperor. Up next is the nation of Ragusa. Ragusa starts off as a one province minor surrounded by a ton of nations here, which means that you have a whole lot of expansion possibilities into first off Herzegovina, Bosnia and Serbia, as well as expand into Venice after you've secured a foothold in the other Balkan nations. The best part about Ragusa is that you start as a guarantee from the Ottomans, which means that nobody is actually going to touch you unless they want to be fighting the Ottomans themselves, and that means that you basically have nothing to worry about from your neighbors. The Ragusan ideas are average. They get trade efficiency plus 10 and trade power abroad plus 10% from the start, which is going to help as they are a trade republic, and after you unlock everything, you also get morale of navies. Some other highlights from their mission tree include domestic trade power plus 20, diplomats plus 1, naval force limit plus 20, and national tax modifier. These ideas are not amazing, but the thing is, Ragusa can actually reunite the kingdom of Dalmatia by simply owning these 2 provinces next to them that belong to Venice, and the Dalmatian ideas are super strong. Having Dalmatia formed early game means that you're gonna get an easy time expanding. You even can get some more cores on the surrounding areas, especially on Istria and the 2 provinces that Croatia has. Taking over the coastline of the Adriatic, as well as establishing a foothold in Naples after it becomes independent, means that you're going to basically control the Venice trade node and can use that to your advantage, becoming slightly richer than you could ever imagine. From the lands of the rising sun comes the nation of Nanbu, a small one province minor on the edge of the Honshu island of Japan. Nanbu has some secret ideas that not many are aware of, which make it the best choice in the Japanese islands for playing toll. This means they don't have the best military ideas, but they have a great mix of both military and economic ideas. They get construction cost and discipline plus 5 from the start, and after you finish everything, production efficiency plus 10. You also get morale of armies plus 10%, diplomats plus 1, national unrest minus 1, tax plus 10, shock damage plus 10%, and dev cost minus 10%. Aside from the really great ideas, Nanbu has an easy time in securing its part of Japan and then expanding into the rest afterwards. Starting off on the edge of the Sengoku Jidai means that they can just quickly eat up all of their neighbors here, namely Ando, Shiba, Date, and so on, and they only need to focus on one side of Japan rather than being worried about being attacked from 2 sides. Nanbu, of course, gets the default mission tree that all of the other Japanese nations get, and in order to form Japan, they will have to own both Kyoto and Musashi, as well as have taken out the other daimyos in the Japanese islands. Yet another great choice for playing toll. Up next is Goslar. Goslar is a small province in the Saxony-Anhalt state that has the options of forming Saxony as well as reform into Prussia and later on into the German Empire. What this means is that if you play your cards right, you can use up all of these Saxon missions that you don't have at the start, so you actually have to form Saxony to get these missions, and then you can use up the Prussian missions and their government reform that gives them the militarization mechanics mechanics, and later on you can form Germany and even keep the militarization mechanics. Aside from the many formable nations that you can have as Goslar, you also have really great playing tool ideas. You start with -10 dev cost reduction and +1 diplo reputation, and you also get goods produced plus 10%, construction cost -10, as well as imperial authority modifier plus 0.10. So if you want to go for the emperorship, Goslar has an ace up its sleeve when it comes to imperial authority. You also have province trade power modifier plus 10 and reform progress growth, land force limit plus 20%, morale of armies plus 10, and diplo relations plus 1. Even if you don't want to go and form Prussia and you just want to go as Saxony, I recommend that you keep the Goslar ideas if you form Saxony, as they are slightly better than the Saxon ones when dealing with the HRE mechanics and with all of the politics in the HRE. One more thing to take note of is that you start off as a free city, so you start off with the bonus -10% dev cost and +10 trade efficiency as long as you remain a one province minor. That means that expanding will lose you the government, but as long as you are a OPM, you can dev up your capital city for a lot cheaper than you would otherwise. Even so, if you get an expansion opportunity early on into Magdeburg or Brunswick, take it, especially if you can expand into Brunswick. That's going to give you all the expansion paths afterwards in pretty much everything in the northern part of Germany. Next up is the nation of Ardabil. Ardabil starts right next to both Karakoyunlu and Ajam, and you have a couple of cores on both Ajam as well as your smaller neighbor Biapas here. This is quite crucial, as using up these cores is going to be important early on, and they will give you expansion paths into both Ajam as well as Biapas. Ajam likely will go to war with Timurids if they don't get a massive rebellion from their vassals, so when that happens, that will be your moment to attack Ajam and take back your cores together with as much more land as you can take. Whilst you wait for that though, I recommend you go for Biapas, Shirvan, and remember that you're also a Shia nation that has the Jafari school, which means you get +10 shock damage that moves in quite nicely with your own national ideas. As you start off with national manpower +15 and manpower recovery speed +10, you also get morale of armies, cav combat ability +15%, and missionary strength versus heretics +2. Now, these are not great ideas, but after you've taken back your cores and you've taken the cores required to form the nation of Persia, you should be forming Persia, as their ideas are considerably better, and they also have missions, which you don't really have that many of. Ardabil also can form the Mughals later on after you form Persia by going into the north of India, and you can get their amazing assimilation mechanics, which are great for a world conquest. Until that time, however, you have your own great government reform, namely the feudal theocracy, which gives 1 extra missionary and governing capacity, as well as the 3 great interactions that lower construction cost by 15, dev cost by 20, or can give you a holy war CB against any non-Shia neighbors that you have. You do, however, have a lot of Shia neighbors, as both Karakoyunlu, Ajam, and even Shirvan are Shia, but then again, Biapas is Sunni, as are the rest of the nations in this area, so you can use that to your advantage. If you like trade, then you're gonna love the Trade Master General Lubeck himself. That is correct, Lubeck is an insanely overpowered nation when it comes to economies, one of the strongest nations in the mid to late game. If you're doing your economy right and you're managing your trade correctly, Lubeck starts with trade range +15 and trade steering +10%, and you get another trade efficiency +10 later down the line after you fill up all your ideas. You get also global trade power +10%, merchants +1, national sailors and ship costs, together with manpower recovery speed +15, provincial trade power +20%, and interest per annum -0.50. But that's not all, because the Lubeck missions are extremely overpowered also. For the city of Lubeck, you get trade power +15 and trade power +25%, both at the same time. So because of the +25%, you can get up to 300 trade power in this one small city. Later on, you get until the end of the game trade efficiency +10% and global trade power +5, as well as advisor cost -10 and diplo rep +1, and you can get all of your trade league members as a vassal by clicking a button later on, together with diplo rep +1 until the end of the game, and a nice name change to the Hanseatic League. Aside from the great ideas and missions, Lubeck can also form the German nation, or you can culture convert and form Prussia, thus benefiting from both your great situation trade-wise in the Baltic trade node as well as the Lubeck trade node, and you can also become a super great military powerhouse. Lubeck being the leader of the trade league means that basically you don't need to worry about any of the bigger nations attacking you ever, as you are actually going to be able to crush them with your many small armies of tiny trade league ants. Expansion wise, you get a lot of claims that you can use in taking over the lands in the Lubeck trade node early on, and depending on what you're going to do afterwards, you also get your opportunities to expand into the Baltic trade node. Returning to the lands of the rising sun, we have the nation of Oda. Quite likely the nation with the best ideas early on, and most likely the best military ideas. Oda starts with plus 10 morale of armies, infantry combat ability plus 10 as well, and after you finish everything, you get land fire damage plus 1. You also get some great economic boosts such as goods produced plus 10 and core creation minus 10, together with province war score cost minus 10%, more leader shock damage, leader siege plus 1, land fire damage plus 10, tech cost minus 5, and national manpower modifier plus 20%. They also of course get the same ideas as everybody else in Japan. The difference with Oda is that the start can be quite difficult as you are surrounded by quite a few warring nations, and there is a very high chance that you're gonna get destroyed early on if you're not sure how to play your cards right. You should also watch my guide to learn how to play your cards right. Going into Kitabatake early game is gonna be vital. Do not attempt to attack Toki, as Toki is gonna have a level 3 fort, which means that you're not going to have enough troops for this unless you go over your force limit by quite a bit, and you should go over your force limit, but not by 9 units. That's a bit of an overkill. If you do go by 9 units, then you might as well attack Tokugawa, which is going to be allied to Hosokawa, so you're going to have to fight 8,000 units from the start. After unifying Japan as Oda, make sure that you keep the Oda ideas, do not switch over to the Japanese ideas, and use those to crush any sort of opposition in Manchuria, as well as go into Ming. And if you decide to go for colonial ideas, then you should definitely colonize Malacca and go into the New World to bring in some trade from there. Although I would prioritize colonizing Malacca and parts of Siberia to cut off the Russians from expanding into Siberia. If you're a fan of Salahuddin, then you're gonna be a massive fan of Hisn Kayfa. Alright, that was a bit too much. In any case, Hisn Kayfa has really great ideas. It starts off with tax modifier plus 10 at the start of the game, which is great because at the start tax modifier is important. Later down the line, not so much. You also get shock damage received minus 10%, and after you fill up all of your Ayubid ideas, you get plus 5 discipline. You also have plus 20 fort defense, national manpower plus 15, morale of armies plus 10, cav combat ability plus 10%, core creation minus 15, stab cost minus 10, and goods produced plus 10%. The ideas of the Ayubids are extremely great, and they mix up really nicely with the 3 missions that they also start off with. You have the prepare to war mission that gives you Al Jazeera permanent claims, and I'm not talking about the newspaper, I'm talking about your home state here. That means you get permanent claims on both Akoyunlu and Karakoyunlu. It is going to be a tough war, and you might have to restart a few times, but for example, if Akoyunlu doesn't ally the Ottomans, it should be a fairly easy war. Another shining thing about Hisn Kayfa is the fact that you can reform the Persian nation, the Mughal Empire, as well as enthrone the Timurid princes, which basically means if you own some provinces within the Timurid lands and you don't have the Timurid dynasty, as well as if it is before 1490, you can get a Timurid dynasty on your throne, and that means you can form the Timurid nation as a consequence. If you play your cards right, Hisn Kayfa can form 3 different nations with 3 different mission trees and different mechanics. You can also choose to keep your Hisn Kayfa ideas, which are seriously good, or you can just switch on over to some other idea set, as both Timurids and Mughals and even the Persians have great ideas. One thing to note about Hisn Kayfa is that it can be quite a tough start if you're a newer player to the game, so please keep that in mind. Coming in from above the Alps is the nation of Saluzzo. That is correct, the tallest nation according to the land features of North Italy. Saluzzo does have some aces up its sleeve. Despite being a 1 province minor, it does start off in the richest trade node in Italy, the Genoa trade node, and with a few really good and cunning moves early game, you can secure a big chunk of that trade node by expanding into Savoy at the very start and getting rid of you being a landlocked nation, and then going also into Genoa and so on. Despite having a slightly harder start than most of the nations on this list, Saluzzo definitely earned its right to be here on this spot, as it has the best ideas in the game. It starts with infantry combat ability plus 10 and aggressive expansion minus 15, which is super good because you're in the HRE, and after you leave the HRE, you're still in a super high development area. Once you fill up all of your ideas, you get minus 15% core creation cost. You also get province trade trade power modifier, goods produced plus 10%, morale of armies plus 10, movement speed plus 15%, missionary faith and national tax, but best of all, you get trade steering plus 20%. I've recently realized that people don't really realize how overpowered trade steering is. Putting together the fact that you have province trade power modifier and trade steering within the same idea, and it's 20% by the way, and you're part of the Genoa trade node, it simply means that you can get insanely rich by steering trade from your adjacent trade areas, especially from the Alexandria, Ragusa, and the Sevilla trade areas, all the way into your massive trade node here. Aside from the trade ideas, the military ideas are very likely the strongest in Europe at the very least, and the fact that you don't even need to form a nation to get these ideas is mind-baffling. You can, however, form both Sardinia, Piedmont, as well as Italy, but if you do, remember to keep your own national ideas. You have as well the standard Italian missions that are pretty decent, but they're not amazing. You will be getting the Sardinia and Piedmont missions after you've taken out Savoy and you got the provinces that you need in order to form this nation. I will be making a guide for Saluzzo very shortly, and I hope you guys will check it out when it's out. Next is the truly overpowered nation of Dithmarschen. Yes, that is correct. Dithmarschen is way more powerful than anybody knows. And that is not simply because of their national ideas, which are decent. You have morale of armies plus 10 and shock damage received from the start, which is when it counts. And you also get infantry combat ability, merchants plus 1, true faith tolerance, privateering plus 20%, and chance of capturing ships, dev cost minus 10, autonomy change minus 0.05, and goods produced plus 10. But that's not the shining jewel of Dithmarschen. Even though these ideas are great, what really makes them shine is their missions. First off, we have the conquest of bread that gives you plus 20% goods produced modifier, and you also have the populist zeal that gives plus 5% admin efficiency, as well as a permanent claim on all of Russia, or better yet, the Russian region. In any case, these both are permanent modifiers, and they can stack up with your own goods produced, but more importantly, you can form the nation of Germany later down the line, which also has its own plus 5 admin efficiency and 20% goods produced. That means you can get up to 40% goods produced and 10% admin efficiency from the German ideas and your mission tree, and another 5 from the German missions. And a very common strat is to actually form Prussia before you form Germany, so you can do Dithmarschen into Prussia into Germany, which altogether is gonna give you plus 20% admin efficiency from the Prussian missions together with the German and Dithmarschen missions and the German ideas. That is not to include the absolutism and so on that you will have by that point. You can also form the nation of Hanover if you don't want to form Prussia. They also have great ideas as well. It's your choice. The thing is, Dithmarschen is very versatile, and it is a super great nation to be playing as. You also have your own government reform, the Peasants' Republic, that gives you plus 10 production efficiency and plus 5% morale of armies. And you can even unlock a special CB, the Peasants' War. One more thing to note is that Dithmarschen starts off with a specially selected leader at the start of the game. That means it's always going to be a different guy, and if you are willing to, you can restart until you get a 666 ruler from day one. Dithmarschen's position is also super good as you start off in the Lubeck trade node, which has the potential to be the strongest trade node in the world quite fast and quite easily early on in the game. You get a ton of choices when it comes to allies as well, and you can even join the Hanseatic League if that's what you want to. I don't recommend doing that, however, as it's better to just keep your trade power to yourself and just eat up all of these nations around rather than joining their silly trade league. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, and once we have 1,000 likes, I'm gonna do the top 10 best religions in EU4 1.30. Don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section and let me know what you think about this video. If you liked it, what do you think about the list, what you would have added or taken out from it. Also want to give a very big shout out to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much, guys, for all the support you've been offering me. If anybody else wants to become a channel member or a patron, then you can check the links in the description. So until the next one, have a great day, everybody. Starting our list out, returning to the lands of the pizza.